Hello everyone. Today we'll be discussing a set of questions based on Current Affairs 2020 Economy and Banking Concepts Test 75. So let us straight away move to the first question then. The first question says, based on the amended Conduct of Election Rules 1961, which category of people can now cast their votes through postal ballot? Answer is in front of you. Answer is option 4. 1 and 2 of above, which means persons with disability and people over 80 years of age can now cast their votes through postal ballot. Previously, only certain category of people employed in the service voter category were allowed to vote through the postal ballot. Now, what do you mean service category voter? So, service electors are those voters who are a part of either the army of the Union of India or they belong to the army of the state, and therefore these people were allowed to vote through the postal ballot. Now question comes, what exactly is a postal ballot? So postal ballot refers to any vote that is done through electronically transmitted postal ballot papers. So I'll go slightly slow here. Please write down the acronym ETPB. ETPB. The full form is electronically electronically transmitted electronically transmitted ballot papers. Ballot papers. Electronically transmitted ballot papers. These are distributed to the electors first and then they are returned by post. These are distributed to electors and then they are returned by posts. So previously only people belonging to the army or people belonging to the service voters category were allowed. People belonging to the service voter categories were allowed to vote, but now even people with disability and persons above 80 years of age can vote as well. Now when it comes to this question, we have known the answer, that we now understand what is postal ballot as well. What are the other things that we need to prepare as far as such a question is concerned? So first is, what are the various categories of voters? We said that service voters is one category. So is there any other category decided by the Election Commission of India? We'll come to Election Commission and its detail sometime later. But let us first focus on some basics. So there are three categories. Please write down the names of three categories. When elections happen in India, there are three categories of voters or electors. First is general electors. Write down general electors. First category is general electors. Second is overseas bracket NRI electors. Second category is overseas bracket NRI electors. And the third category is that of service electors. The third category is that of service electors. So we have already written these two categories. The third category we have already seen. What do you mean general electors? General electors are those electors which are citizens of India and are residing in India as well, and they do not have any special mention as such. The second category is that of overseas electors. Now what do you mean overseas? So people who are non-resident Indians, who are Indian citizens but they are not residing in India. Now are they allowed to vote? Yes. But are they allowed to vote through postal ballot? Can they post their votes? No, not really. Then they have to be present in the constituency. So they can vote in person only. So if you want to write this down, please write it down. Even NRIs can, at this point in time till date, there are acts which are pending in the parliament which would allow NRI voters to vote through postal ballot as well. But currently NRIs in India have to vote in person only. So three categories: general electors, second is NRI which is overseas voters, and the third category is that of service voters. So along with service voters, now people with disability and people above 80 years of age can also vote through postal ballots. Now one interesting question that comes to mind that we can discuss when we are discussing particular questions on election is, who can vote in India? So question is, who can vote in India? Yes. So any person who has attained an age of 18 years, any Indian citizen who has attained an age of 18 years at the date of qualification. What is the date of qualification? 1st of January. 1st of January of the year of revision of electoral roll. First listen, I'll give you time to write. So any Indian citizen who has attained the age of 18 years, any Indian citizen who has attained the age of 18 years on the qualifying date or on the date of qualification, which is 1st of January of the year on which electoral roll is revised, is eligible to vote. I'll give you an example to explain what does this definition mean. Suppose the next elections are due in, let's say, 2024, and let's say they are going to happen in May 2024. Now on 1st of January 2024, if a person attains an age of 18 years, then he or she will be eligible to vote. But if a person attains the age of 18 years on, let's say, March, in the month of March or Feb, then he or she is not eligible to vote in that election which will happen in the month of May 2024. So on the qualifying date, so cutoff date is 1st of Jan. On the 1st of Jan, you should be having age of 18 or more. All Indian citizens can vote. Now this system has a very interesting name called as universal suffrage. Please write this term down. Universal suffrage, a very important term as far as your exam is concerned. What do you mean by universal suffrage? Indian constitution does not discriminate voting on the basis of gender, race, caste, creed, and anything else. So every Indian citizen who is above 18 years can vote, except a few minor exceptions which are allowed, like prisoners in India cannot vote. So prisoners officially cannot vote in India. So anybody who is detained cannot vote in India. So this is an exception, but in general, any citizen without. So basically, there is no bias when it comes to gender or caste or creed. And this was adopted in our constitution when our constitution was first made, which means after the constitution was enacted on 26th of January 1950. Since then, universal suffrage is applicable in India, which for some of you might feel what is special in this. So universal suffrage, any Indian citizen can vote. What is so special about this universal suffrage? So just to give you perspective, this is not a very common practice across democracies in the world. What do you mean it is not a very common practice? Just to understand, let us take the example of USA. Can you tell me when did USA become independent? When it became an independent country? Recently, the Independence Day passed for the United States. It was 4th of July. So US became independent on 4th of July, year 1776. So US became independent in 1776, and initially only adult adult white males with property were allowed to vote. So this was a specific qualification you needed to have. So think about it: adult white males with property. So they had to own property. If you are a white male in US but you don't own a property, you cannot vote. So this was the first level classification. Then amendments happened, and then all white people were allowed. Then gradually women were allowed. You'll be surprised to know that women were not allowed to vote in United States elections till the year 1920, 1920. And universal suffrage was adopted in the year 1965, which is 15 years later than what India did as a democracy. And therefore this universal suffrage being there from the start of the constitution is so important. So for US, despite getting independence in 1776, universal suffrage was applicable as late as 1965, and India became independent in 47. When the first constitution was enacted, it included the rights of universal suffrage. What else do we need to know? So in India, voting is not compulsory. So we've understood voting. It is a right, but it is not a compulsion. It is not mandatory for every Indian citizen above 18 years of age to go and vote. There is no punishment. There is no penalty for the same. Are there some democracies where this is Made compulsory? Yes. Australia is one good example. So in Australia, voting is made compulsory. In India, voting is not yet compulsory. It is the choice of the people whether they would want to go and vote or not. And therefore, there are a lot of debates and discussions about the voter turnout. So in a lot of elections, you will hear that the voter turnout was 43%, or the voter turnout was excellent and it was 71%. So what do you mean voter turnout? Out of 100 people who were eligible to vote in that role, 70 people actually went down and voted. So that is 70% turnout, which is considered a healthy number as far as elections in India are concerned because of the huge population that we have. So this is about voting in India in general, universal suffrage. What else do we need to know? So very important, constitutional body, Election Commission of India. Please write down the heading, Election Commission of India. Now this is a constitutional body. I hope you remember the differences between the three terms constitutional body, statutory body and non-statutory body. What do you mean constitutional? A body whose mention is there in the Indian Constitution is called a constitutional body, whereas statutory would mean bodies that have been formed by the acts of parliament, but they do not find mention written in our constitution. And what are non-statutory bodies? Bodies which are simply created by the executive resolution. Cabinet committee headed by the Prime Minister will pass an executive resolution and a particular body will be formed. Such a body is called as a non-statutory body. But if it is passed in the parliament, bill is passed and it becomes an act and that body is created, then that is called a statutory body. We have covered this. I don't exactly remember the test name, but I think it was test 65 where we have covered this in detail. So if you are listening to it for the first time, please make sure that you watch that video again. So this is a constitutional body. It finds mention in the constitution. So this particular Election Commission of India, what is the formation? There are three key people. Obviously, it's a large body, but there are three key people. One being the Chief Election Commissioner. Please write down. Acronym is CEC, Chief Election Commissioner. And then there are two other election commissioners. So total three people, mainly at the top, one being the Chief Election Commissioner, and then there are two more people along with him called as election commissioners. Now, who is the current Chief Election Commissioner of India? So please write down the name. Mr. Sunil Arora. Sunil, S-U-N-I-L, Arora, A-R-O-R-A. Mr. Sunil Arora. He is the current Chief Election Commissioner. He is the 23rd CEC of India. So please in bracket write down the number 23rd. So he is the 23rd Chief Election Commissioner of India. Before him the CEC was Mr. Om Prakash Rawat. Before Sunil Arora, our CEC was Mr. Om Prakash Rawat. So when I say it's a constitutional body, when was it formed? It was formed on 25th of January 1950, just one day before we celebrated our first Republic Day. So please write down the date, 25th January 1950. 25th of January 1950. Fine. What else do we need to know? Since 2012, this particular date, 25th of January, is celebrated as National Voters Day. Please write this down as well. Anyways, observed days are very important category as far as your exam is concerned. So please write down 25th January is celebrated as National Voters Day. National Voters Day. Fine. What else do we need to know about? So currently the mode of voting in India is through electronic mode and we use something called EVMs. I'm sure you have heard about EVMs and malfunctioning of EVMs as an allegation by parties which typically lose in the elections. So all these allegations keep on coming, but we typically use EVMs. So write down the full form. Full form can be asked in exam. Full form of EVM is electronic voting machine. electronic voting machine. So since when are we using them in elections? Since 2004. They were tried on a pilot basis between 1998 and 2001, but their actual usage started since 2004 elections. EVM, electronic voting machines. But because of a lot of allegations of malfunctioning of EVMs, and they can be rigged and they can favor a particular party and so on, another particular machine is attached to EVMs called as VVPAT. Write down the acronym please. VVPAT. Double VPAT. Double VPAT. Please write down the full form. Full form for VVPAT is Voter Verifiable. Voter Verifiable Paper Audit. Paper Audit Trail. TRAIL. Voter Verifiable. Voter Verifiable Paper Audit Trail. So what do VVPAT do? They are basically a printing machine which, when a particular vote is cast, also develop a print of the vote that has been cast. So just to check the uh, veracity of the vote that has been cast, whether the machine is rigged or not, that random checks could be made if required. But let's not go into those details at this point in time. Just understand that it's a machine which is used for verification whether a particular vote casted by a particular citizen is right or not. That can be tested through this machine called VVPAT, Voter Verifiable Paper Audit Trail. So this much information I believe is sufficient as far as this general discussion on elections and voting in India is concerned. So India is a vibrant democracy, and despite its large population and such a diverse set of population, we have been able to successfully continue with our democratic form of government. It is typically considered a big achievement for a country like India. Fine. Let's move on to the next question. So the next question says, with which of the following countries did India conduct the joint military exercise called Dustlik 2019? Dustlik 2019. Answer is option second, Uzbekistan. That's in front of you, highlighted in bold. Now, a lot of times these questions comes with regards to joint military exercises, and in our previous sessions as well, we have covered a lot of joint exercises. As I've suggested earlier as well, make sure that you create separate pages for the same. So I'll suggest keep 2 pages separately for all the joint military exercises that India conducts with all the other nations. Sometimes you might get military exercises among different nations which are not, which does not include India as well, which might be important if they are in news. So create separately 2 pages for the same where you can note this down. I'll again repeat. I know some of you might have attended few sessions earlier where these questions would have been discussed in detail, but nonetheless it will act as a good revision for you. I hope you're able to remember them. If not, try and memorize these exercises parallelly. So I'm dictating all the military exercises one by one. Please make sure that you make a note of them. So you can make 2 columns. One is the name of the exercise and the second is countries associated with those particular exercise. So write down the first name, Varun, Varuna, Varun exercise, Varun, Varuna. Sometimes it is pronounced as Varuna. So Varun or Varuna exercise, it's a joint exercise between France and India. Between France and India. Varun exercise between France and India. Then write down Malabar. Next exercise, Malabar, Malabar. Malabar. In the countries, write down trilateral naval exercise. Trilateral. What do you mean trilateral? There will be 3 countries will be jointly participating in these exercises. Trilateral. Trilateral naval exercise between India, Japan and US. India, Japan and US. Fine. Write down the next exercise. Simbex. 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 Simbex is a joint exercise between Singapore and India. Singapore and India. Singapore and India. Singapore and India. Then write down the next exercise. Maitri. Maitri. Maitri is a Hindi word. It typically means friendship. So Maitri, M-A-I-T-R-E-E, Maitri is a joint exercise between Thailand and India. Thailand and India. Maitri is a joint exercise between Thailand and India. Thailand and India. Then write down the next. Slinex. Slinex. S-L-I-N-E-X. Slinex. Slinex is a joint exercise between Sri Lanka and India. Sri Lanka and India. Sri Lanka and India. Then write down next. Gimex. Write down the next exercise. Gimex. Gimex is an exercise easy to remember. Gimex would be between Japan and India. Japan and India. Gimex. J-I-M-E-X. Gimex. And write down the next exercise. Garud Shakti. G-A-R-U-D-A. Garud Shakti. Garud. G-A-R-U-D-A. Garud Shakti. It's an exercise between India and Indonesia. Exercise between India and Indonesia. Exercise between India and Indonesia. Next is Sahyog Kaijin. Sahyog Kaijin. K-A-I-J-E-N. Sahyog Kaijin. This is again between India and Japan. Sahyog Kaijin. It is again between India and Japan. Then you write Sampriti, and recently last year I believe 9th edition happened. Sampriti, S-A-M-P-R-I-T-I, Sampriti. It's a joint exercise between India and Bangladesh. I'll repeat, Sampriti, S-A-M-P-R-I-T-I. Sampriti, it's a joint exercise between India and Bangladesh. Then you have nomadic elephant. Please write down nomadic elephant. N-O-M-A-D-I-C, nomadic elephant. It's a joint exercise between India and Mongolia. India and Mongolia. India and Mongolia. Then write down the next name. Indradhanush. I-N-D-R-A. Indradhanush. Indradhanush. This is between Indian Air Force and the Royal Air Force of the United Kingdom. Indradhanush. Indradhanush. Joint exercise between Indian Air Force and the Royal Air Force of the United Kingdom. Then write down Kaz-Ind. K-A-Z-I-N-D. Kaz-Ind. You can guess which two countries would be involved? Yes, Kazakhstan and India. Kazakhstan and India. Then one last exercise. Please write down the correct spelling. Zair al-Bahr. I'll dictate the spelling. Z-A-I-R hyphen. Repeating, Z-A-I-R hyphen A-L hyphen B-A-H-R. B-A-H-R. Zair al-Bahr, or it also means roar of the sea. R-O-A-R. R-O-A-R. Roar of the sea is a joint naval exercise or a maritime exercise between India and Qatar. India and Qatar. Q-A-T-A-R. Capital being Doha. So it's a joint exercise between India and Qatar. Fine. I believe this many exercises are expected of you to be remembered. So make sure that you have made good notes Regularly revise them. As and when more questions come in some more future sessions, revisions would happen, and you will be easily able to memorize them. Fine. So let's move on to the next question then. World Tsunami Awareness Day is observed on. Answer is in front of you. Answer is November 5th. Just write down one more piece of information. Japan is credited with the creation of awareness with regards to tsunami and the damage that it creates to be able to come up with a World Tsunami Awareness Day. So if you are asked which country is associated with the creation of World Tsunami Awareness Day, please remember answer is Japan. Answer is Japan. So November 5 is done. Let's move on to other options. Such by the way, there are general doubts that students have with regards to why are some days called world days or international days, whereas some other days are only called as national days. For example, just now we discussed 25th January as a National Voters Day. So one obvious difference is that when it comes to national days, they are specific to a particular country. So if we have a national day in India, let's say National Voters Day, it is specifically relevant for India, and India will celebrate it. India will celebrate that particular day. The entire world may not celebrate it. Whereas all the world or international days are adopted in a resolution by the General Assembly. So United Nations is a parent body that deals with managing the observances of all these observed days that we say are world days or international days, and therefore November 5th when we say is World Tsunami Awareness Day, so the entire world will celebrate it. United Nations General Assembly has adopted a resolution for the same so that all the member countries agree that such a particular day has to be observed. For example, just a year back or so, International Day of Yoga or International Yoga Day, as it is called. So this was a resolution passed in the General Assembly which was accepted, and now Yoga Day is celebrated as an international day. So understand the difference between world or international days and national days. For example, the first option, 14th November, we say it's Children's Day. So it's Children's Day in India. We celebrate it to celebrate the birthday of our first Prime Minister, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru. So 14th November is Children's Day in India. Whereas if you look at option 3, December 1. So December 1st is World's AIDS Day. It is World AIDS Day. Please write down the acronym AIDS, AIDS Day. World AIDS Day. So what is it that we need to remember as far as World AIDS Day is concerned? One is obviously the full form. So there are two things that we need to understand. One is HIV and second is AIDS. So HIV represents a virus. Please write down the full form of HIV. Human. I'm sure a lot of you already know this. Yes, what is the full form? Human. Yes, human immunodeficiency virus. Write down the full form. Human immunodeficiency virus. So there is at this point in time till date there is no cure for HIV, which means once a person is infected with HIV, he will remain infected with HIV for life, and this disintegrates his immune system, and over a period of certain years typically he acquires a disease called as AIDS. So HIV is the virus and the corresponding disease is AIDS. Write down the full form of AIDS. AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Fine. It was first identified in the year 1981, and since then we haven't been able to cure this disease. So think about the seriousness of this issue, that it's been what, 81, and this is 2020, 40 long years almost. We haven't been able to find a cure for this disease. So we say we are really advanced. The question is, are we really? Next, December 31st, New Year's Eve, so no need to discuss anything more about 31st December. December 5, this year, incidentally in 2020, this will be celebrated as International Volunteer Day. Please write down International Volunteer Day, but please write down that first Saturday of December first Saturday of December is celebrated as International Volunteer Day, which in this case, this year 2020, Saturday happens to be on December 5, and therefore this year 2020 December 5 will celebrate as International Volunteer Day. Any other important day that we need to remember as far as this list is concerned? Let's discuss few more important days for December only, because this list typically is for November and December. So December 9th, please write down, December 9th is World Anti-Corruption Day. World Anti-Corruption Day. And December 10th is World Human Rights Day. December 10th is World Human Rights Day. December 10th, World Human Rights Day. Fine. So let's move on to the next question then. The Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace, Disarmament and Development for 2019 will be conferred on. Answer is in front of you. Answer is option 3. David Attenborough. David Attenborough. Now, who is this person, David Attenborough? He is an English or a British broadcaster and a natural historian. So, this particular Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace is conferred to him. He is also the younger brother of another famous personality named Richard Attenborough. So, write down, David Attenborough won this prize, and he is a younger brother of Richard Attenborough. I hope that some of you know this person or have heard this name. He is a famous producer and director. So now I am discussing about Richard Attenborough. So Richard Attenborough is a famous producer and director of the 1982 movie Gandhi. 1982 movie Gandhi. It was nominated for 11 Oscars and it won 8 of them, including the Best Picture and the Best Director Award for Richard Attenborough and the Best Actor Award to Ben Kingsley. Best Actor Award for Oscars to Ben Kingsley for the movie Gandhi in 1982. So Richard Attenborough's younger brother is David Attenborough, who won this Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace in 2019. Now, what else do we need to remember about this? What are these other options? So 2019 prize went to David Attenborough. In 2018, the award was given to Center for Science and Environment. Please write this down. Center for Science and Environment 2018 Indira Gandhi Prize. So we need to remember just last few one or two names. 2018, write down so these are the two most recent. 2019 is David Attenborough. 2018 is Center for Science and Environment. Center for Science and Environment 2018 prize. Then Mr. Manmohan Singh won the prize in the year 2017. Manmohan Singh won the prize in the year 2017. Angela Merkel, who is she? Yes, she is the Chancellor of Germany. She is the Chancellor of Germany. She won the award in 2013. She won the award in 2013. This last option, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, she won the award in 2012. She won the award in 2012. She was the president of Liberia. President of Liberia. And fourth option, Ela Bhatt. She won it in 2011. Same, this Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace. Ela Bhatt won it in 2011. She founded SEWA. Please write this word all in caps lock. SEWA. SEWA. SEWA in Hindi or in a lot of other languages means service. So this NGO was founded in 1972 by Ela Bhatt. SEWA. What is the full form of SEWA? Please write down the full form of SEWA. Self-employed Women's Association. Self-employed Women's Association. So this fourth option, Ela Bhatt founded the NGO SEWA in 1972, and this is the largest non-for-profit organization in India. It is the largest non-for-profit organization in India currently. Fine. So I believe this much information is sufficient as far as Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace is concerned. There is also another prize uh, titled Gandhi. It is called as International Gandhi Prize. Please write down International Gandhi Peace Prize. International Gandhi Peace Prize. Now, this International Gandhi Peace Prize is given by the government of India. So, in the jury, Prime Minister is one of the members in the jury as far as International Gandhi Peace Prize is concerned. It is also sometimes called as simply Gandhi Peace Prize or Gandhi Prize. So, not to get confused with this, Indira Gandhi Peace Prize is given by the Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust. Indira Gandhi Peace Prize is given by the Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust, which we discussed all these options for. There is another prize called as International Gandhi Peace Prize. It is given by the Government of India. Typically, it is awarded every year, but it was not awarded to anyone in 2019. So the clause is that if the government does not feel, if the jury doesn't feel any person worthy enough, it may decide not to confer an award in that particular year. So the 2019 award was not given to anyone. The last recipient was in 2018. 2018. Please write down the name. Yohei. 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 Yohei Sasakawa. Sasakawa. Yohei Sasakawa. Can you guess the country by the name? Yohei Sasakawa? Yes, most of you would have guessed it right. He's from Japan, and he won it for his contribution for eradicating leprosy not just in India but for his efforts across the world. Yohei Sasakawa. He won the International Gandhi Peace Prize. This particular International Gandhi Peace Prize was constituted in 1995. Constituted in 1995, and it is typically awarded every year, but then there might be few years where the government may not award it to anyone particular. So last awardee was in 2018, Yohei Sasakawa from Japan. Fine. Let's move on to the next question then. According to BP Statistical Review, which country was the biggest growth driver of primary energy consumption in the world in 2019? Answer is in front of you. Answer is option 3, China. Who was the second biggest growth driver? Can you guess? Answer is India. India was the second biggest growth driver of primary energy consumption in the world after China. Now, what is BP here? BP Statistical Review. So we can understand that there is a particular research done by this particular body called BP, and it has come up with some statistics with regards to energy consumption in the world. But what does BP stand for here? So please write down BP stands for a company called British Petroleum. British Petroleum. This is not Bharat Petroleum. This is British Petroleum. Now, just to give you a perspective, British Petroleum is the 7th largest company in the world by revenue. Please write down. This is again an important question as far as your exam is concerned. In the list of Fortune 500 companies for 2019, just create this heading: Fortune 500, Fortune 500 dash 2019. 2019. So as far as Fortune 500 2020 list is yet to be announced, as far as Fortune 500 2019 list goes, this is the 7th largest company in the world by revenue. The revenues of BP are more than the nominal GDP of Pakistan. So just to give you a comparison, the revenue of one company in particular, BP, are more than the nominal GDP of Pakistan. So that is the size that we are talking about. This is the 7th largest company in the world. Which is the first largest? Please write down the name. Can you guess? Walmart. Walmart. Walmart is the largest company in the world by revenues as per the Fortune 500 list. Walmart. So we have discussed British Petroleum, we've discussed Walmart. Are there any Indian companies in the list of Fortune 500? Any Indian companies? Yes, there are a total of 7 companies. So please write down the heading 7 companies that are a part of Fortune 500 list 2019. Largest companies of the world by revenue. Largest companies of the world by revenue. Now you might feel, is it important for us to remember the 7 names? I would suggest yes, try and memorize them once and then regularly revise if possible. They'll be easy to remember, not too difficult if you understand them logically. So when you say largest companies by revenues, think of the largest companies in India. Typically they would be from the oil or petroleum sector or the energy sector. Some might be from other sectors as well. So out of the 7 companies, please write this category. 4 belong to energy. 4 belong to energy or oil in general. No specific classification done by Fortune 500 like this. Just I am giving you hints so that you are able to memorize or remember names easily. So 4 companies belong to the petroleum or the oil or energy sector in general. Can you now guess big 4 companies in India that belong to the petroleum or energy sector? Yes, the first name is Reliance Industries. Reliance Industries, and Reliance Industries, by the way, as of June 20th, was the largest company in India by market capitalization as well. Largest company, Reliance Industries Limited, RIL. RIL, current chairman being Mukesh Ambani, Mr. Mukesh Ambani. So Reliance Industries Limited is the first company in that list of Fortune 500. Then second is Indian Oil Corporation. So you don't need to remember ranks as such. So among 500 when we say BP is 7th, RIL by the way is 106th, but you don't need to remember all these ranks. No need to memorize them. So Reliance Industries Limited is by the way ranked 106th. Don't need to remember these ranks. Next is Indian Oil Corporation, IOC, Indian Oil Corporation. It is ranked 117th, 117. Indian Oil Corporation. Any other 2 names that come to mind when it comes to petroleum? Yes, ONGC, Oil and Natural Gas Corporation. Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, ranked 160. So we have listed 3 companies: RIL, IOC, Indian Oil Corporation, and then ONGC, Oil and Natural Gas Corporation. Then the fourth is Bharat Petroleum. Bharat Petroleum, BPCL. Bharat Petroleum. Bharat Petroleum. It is ranked 275th. Now, one more important message with regards to this BPCL, government has decided to disinvest its 53.29% stake. So, government of India has decided to sell off its stake in BPCL to private players. This was a target for the financial year 2019 and 20. Unfortunately, because of a lot of reasons, including one of the reason being COVID-19, this could not happen. But currently, till date, ministry says that this is on track and they will try their best to disinvest the 53.29% stake in BPCL. So these were the 4 companies in the Fortune 500 list. The other 3 non-petroleum or energy companies are State Bank of India, and this is probably very important. Which bank is a part of Fortune 500 list 2019? The answer is State Bank of India. It is ranked 236th. State Bank of India, 236th. Then you have Tata Motors. Tata Motors. Tata Motors. It is ranked 265th. Tata Motors, 265th. And the last company in the list, there are only 7 companies in Fortune 500. The last company being Rajesh Exports. So this might come as a surprise for a lot of you. You might not have heard of this company's name. Maybe it's time to go back and search a bit. Rajesh Exports. It's by revenue. Its profits are not that high, but by revenue it is pretty large. So Rajesh Exports, it is ranked 495th. 495th. Fine. So I believe this much information is sufficient. Let's move on to the next question then. On behalf of the Government of India, which of these organizations issues government bonds and treasury bills known as gilt-edged securities? Now answer is in front of you. Answer is RBI, which is the Reserve Bank of India. What else do we need to know about this? So one is, what are these gilt edged securities, or what are government securities in general? So government securities can be broadly classified into two parts: short term and long term. Short term GSECs, as they are called, government securities. No need to write this. I'll give you the link where you can read all this stuff written as it is, and I'm sure you already know the website. The website is rbi.org.in. So more important for you at this point in time is to understand what you mean by this gilt edged security. So government securities can be in short called as GSECs, G-SECs. GSECs can be short term or long term. Short term GSECs are also called as treasury bills. Short term GSECs are also called as treasury bills. Typically in India we have a 91-day treasury bill, a 182-day treasury bill, and a 364-day treasury bill. Three categories: 91-day, 182-day, and 364, all less than 1 year. So they are short term. And the long term are sometimes called as government bonds or dated securities. They are called as gilt edged. What does gilt as a word mean? Gilt refers to gold. So they are called as gold edged securities. Why are they called gold edged? They are having an edge of gold. Yes, they are very safe. So when you say government securities, the risk of default is almost zero. Why am I saying that risk of default is almost zero? Why not absolutely zero? It is in fact close to absolutely zero. For all practical purposes, you can assume that it is practically zero, but still we cannot say absolutely zero, because there is still a risk of government defaulting, which would mean the country going bankrupt, which means the government raising hands and saying we cannot pay. So as long as the government can be trusted that it will pay back money and the economy is doing decently well, then there is absolutely zero risk or close to zero risk for these bonds. Therefore, they are very safe, and because they are safe, they are also called as gilt-edged securities. Fine. What else do we need to know as far as this question is concerned? The other bodies, I believe, are pretty straightforward. SEBI is Securities and Exchange Board of India. Securities and Exchange Board of India, formed 1992. Formed 1992. Who's the current chairman? Mr. Ajay Tyagi. Who's the current chairman? Mr. Ajay Tyagi for SEBI. LIC, Life Insurance Corporation. Life Insurance Corporation. When was this formed? It was formed in the year 1956. Please write down 1956. LIC by LIC Act 1956. Who's the current chairman? Write down the name, Mr. M.R. Kumar. Mr. M.R. Kumar. Mr. M.R. Kumar. For SBI, I am sure you already would have dedicated at least a page with regards to formation of SBI and the three earlier banks during the British rule, the Imperial Bank, by merging the three bigger banks, Banks of Calcutta, Bank of Bombay, Bank of Madras, and all those stuff. So if you have to say the origin date or the foundation date of SBI, it can go way back as 2nd June 1806. 2nd of June 1806, when the Bank of Calcutta was formed. So Bank of Calcutta, after merger with Bank of Bombay, Madras became the Imperial Bank and then became SBI. All this story I'm sure you know. If you don't, write it as an assignment. History of SBI going back to Bank of Calcutta. So history of SBI, I'm sure you'll cover. Who's the current chairman? I'm sure you also know, Mr. Rajneesh Kumar. Rajneesh Kumar, chairman of SBI. What is this last FIMMDA? It stands for Fixed Income, Money Market and Derivatives Association. I'll go slow here. Please write down Fixed Income, Money Market, Fixed FIXED, Fixed Income, Money Market, Fixed Income, Money Market and Derivatives, Fixed Income, Money Market and Derivatives Association of India. Derivatives Association of India. It's a voluntary body created in 1998. So registered under the Companies Act 1956. What it does is it's an association of all the leading commercial banks, the insurance corporation, and gives advisory or issues with regards to issues pertaining in the financial environment of the country. So not a very important body as far as your exam is concerned. Just remember the full form: Fixed Income Money Market and Derivatives Association of India, formed 1998. Now, what else will I expect you to know or prepare on your own? Please go to the website rbi.org.in, and when it comes to the menus, in the left hand side you'll get an option on market trends. So in the left you'll get policy rates as one option, and the last menu in that category of 4 or 5 options will be market trends. Once you click on that market trends, you will get a list of the current rates prevailing after the latest auction for the 91-day treasury bill or the 182-day treasury bill and so on. So please go to the website. It will help you remember stuff better. It will help you understand the concepts better. rbi.org.in, left menu, go to market trends and just go through the current rates. Fine. Let's move on to the next question then. Which of the following statements is true regarding payment banks? True regarding payment banks. Answer is in front of you. This is true. Payment banks cannot lend money to people. So they cannot offer loans, they cannot give advances, they cannot lend money. They also cannot offer credit cards. So for whichever payment bank you might be associated with, I'm sure you don't possess a credit card of the same. So credit card and loans are not allowed as far as payment banks are concerned. Also, the limit of deposit is 1 lakh. The limit of deposit is 1 lakh, and it is necessary for payment banks to use these two terms, payment banks, in their name officially. So you will always see these two words attached to the name of any payment bank in India. The two words are payment banks. So it is necessary for every payment bank to have these two words in their name officially. So I'm sure you already know that payment banks were created on the recommendations of which committee? Yes, you're expected to know this. Yes, Nachiket More. Please write down the name. Nachiket, Nachi, Nachiket More. Nachiket More Committee recommended the creation of payment banks. Initially, 11 payment banks were given licenses, but as of now, only 6 payment banks are operational. 6 payment banks are operational. Do you need to know the names of those 6 payment banks which are operational? Yes. Why? There can be a direct question whether a particular bank is operational or not. Second, which of the following is not an operational payment bank, although it got a license. So at least you will know the names of 6, so you will know that the other banks are not operational. So write down the names of those 6 banks. Write down the first name, Airtel Payment Banks Limited. Airtel Payment Bank. Airtel Payments Bank Limited. It was the first payments bank in India to become operational. So this can be one of the questions, which was the first payment bank of India. Answer is Airtel Payments Bank. Answer is Airtel Payments Bank. It's the first payment bank. Write down the second, India Post Payments Bank. Second bank which is operational, India Post. India Post Payments Bank. India Post Payments Bank. Write down the third name, Fino. Fino. Fino Payments Bank. Write down the third name, Fino. Fino Payments Bank. Write down the next fourth name, Paytm Payments Bank. Fourth name, Paytm Payments Bank. Paytm Payments Bank. Fifth name, NSDL Payments Bank. NSDL. NSDL. NSDL Payments Bank. And the last name is Jio Payments Bank. The last name, Jio Payments Bank. There is no particular order with regards to when they got established. The first is obviously true. Airtel Payments Bank was the first, but these are the 6 steps. So just to summarize, Airtel Payments Bank, India Post Payments Bank, Fino Payments Bank, Paytm Payments Bank, NSDL Payments Bank, and Jio Payments Bank. These are the 6 banks which are currently operational in India, and that's pretty much about it as far as this question is concerned, I believe. Just remember these names. Let's move on to the next question. For the first time, India has released its own national report named Assessment of Climate Change over the Indian region on the state of climate crisis. This report is prepared under the aegis of, so aegis is basically sponsorship or guidance. So this report has been prepared under the guidance or sponsorship of, answer is in front of you, option Ministry of Earth Sciences. So any important revelations from this particular report? So it says during the time 1991 to 2018, the average temperature of India has risen by 0.7 degrees Celsius. Please write down 0.7 degrees Celsius is the rise in the average temperature for India between the period 1991 to 2018. Average rise in temperature, average rise in temperature for the period 1991 till 2018 has been 0.7 degrees centigrade, and it has also given a range. It has given a range with regards to the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for 2099 before 2000 2099. So the range is 2.7 degrees to 4.4 degrees. So if all the efforts that the government is currently planning for reduction of greenhouse gases so that global warming can be mitigated, all these measures, if they are taken in the best possible manner, the best case scenario would be that India's average temperature would increase by 2.7 degrees centigrade, which is not sufficient, which is not good enough. So the best case scenario as of today is not good enough, and the worst case scenario is 4.4 degrees centigrade. 4.4 degrees centigrade, that would be disastrous as far as this research is concerned. So this was done under the Ministry of Earth Sciences. Who is the current minister for this particular ministry, Ministry of Earth Sciences? Anybody? Yes, the person is Dr. Harshvardhan. The person is Dr. Harshvardhan. He's also the ministry. He's also the minister for this particular ministry in option 3, Ministry of Science and Technology. So he's currently the minister. Dr. Harshvardhan is the minister for three ministries. One, Ministry of Earth Sciences. Second, Ministry of Science and Technology. And third, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So I'm sure because of the COVID issue, you would have heard his name a lot. He is also the Health Minister. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is also under him. Three ministries under Dr. Harshvardhan: Ministry of Earth Sciences, Ministry of Science and Technology, and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. He is also the chairperson of the executive board. So this I think we have covered in our previous sessions as well. He is also the chairperson of the executive board of the World Health Organization for the next 1 year. He is the chairperson of the executive board. There is also a World Health Assembly. So we are not talking of World Health Assembly. All the member states are part of the World Health Assembly under WHO. We are talking of the executive board. So he is the chairperson. Write it down if you want to. He is the chairperson of the executive board of WHO, World Health Organization. Fine. So then let's move on to the next question then. Which institution signed a pact with the Housing and Urban Affairs Ministry for the implementation of PM's Atmanirbhar Nidhi for 50 lakh street vendors? Answer is in front of you. Answer is SIDBI, as it is called. What is the full form of SIDBI? Full form is Small Industrial Development Bank of India. Please write down. I'll go slightly slow. Small Industrial Development Small Industrial Development Bank of India. It is a primary institution for refinancing and credit to the micro, small and medium enterprises sector in India, MSMEs. So it is a primary lender for the same. Fine. So SIDBI is headquartered in Lucknow. Please remember this. SIDBI headquartered in Lucknow and established in the year 1990. 1990. SIDBI established in 1990, headquartered in Lucknow, and full form being Small Industrial Development Bank of India. We have discussed a lot about SBI, and I'm sure you already know about SBI a lot. What is the full form for IDBI? IDBI is Industrial Development Bank of India, the fourth option. Nothing much to discuss here. SIDBI is also one of the four financial institutions regulated by the RBI. Apart from SIDBI, the other three are Exim Bank. What is the full form for Exim? So SIDBI is one among the four which are under RBI as far as separate financial institutions are concerned. One is SIDBI specifically for MSMEs. Then you have Exim Bank. Exim Bank is to support the export import in India. So trade related bank. Exim, EXIM. EX stands for export, IM stands for import. Exim Bank. Then apart from Exim and SIDBI, another bank is NABARD. What is NABARD? NABARD, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, formed in the year 1982 on the recommendations of Sivaraman Committee. Write down NABARD 1982, formed on the recommendations of Sivaraman Committee. And the last among the four institutions under RBI would be NHB, that is National Housing Bank. National Housing Bank. So I'm repeating the names. Four specialized financial institutions under RBI. Four specialized institutions under RBI. One being SIDBI, second NABARD, third Exim Bank, and the fourth NHB, National Housing Bank. Fifth, ICICI initially earlier used to have a full form Industrial Credit and Investment Corporation of India. Now it does not have any full form. It is simply ICICI Limited. So previously it used to have a full form. If you want to write, you can write it down. Industrial Credit and Investment Corporation. Industrial Credit and Investment Corporation of India. Fine. Fine. Let's move on to the next question then. Who among the following has been conferred with the George Scaler Lifetime Award in Wildlife Conservation Science for his contribution to the field of conservation? Answer is in front of you. Option second, K. Ullas Karanth. K. Ullas Karanth. Not much to discuss here, so we'll straight away move to the next question. Who among the following has been conferred with the ABLF Global Asian Award? ABLF Global Asian Award. Now, what is it that you need to remember as far as this particular award is concerned? One is the full form of ABLF. So please write down Asia Business Leadership Forum. Asia Business Leadership Forum. It is backed by the UAE government, United Arab Emirates. It is backed by the UAE government. Asia Business Leadership Forum, backed by UAE government. And who has won this award? The chairman of the Aditya Birla Group, Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla. Chairman of the Aditya Birla Group. Chairman of the Aditya Birla Group, Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla. Other famous personalities as far as India is concerned who have already won this award earlier include Mr. Late Dhirubhai Ambani and also Lakshmi Nivas Mittal. Also Lakshmi Nivas Mittal. So let's move on to the next question. Who among the following was conferred with the Rajaram Mohan Roy Award that is presented by the Press Council of India? So answer is in front of you. Rajaram Mohan Roy Award was conferred to Mr. Gulab Kothari. He is the chairman. Please write down. Chairman of the Rajasthan Patrika Group. He is the chairman of the Rajasthan Patrika Group. So Rajaram Mohan Roy Award was presented by Press Council. It also confers awards in 8 other miscellaneous categories. So the primary award being Rajaram Mohan Roy Award in journalism. There are also 8 other separate categories in journalism which are awarded by the Press Council. These options 2 and 3, Mr. Sanjay Saini and Mr. Raj Chengappa, they have won award in the rural journalism category. Please write down these two options. They have won awards in the rural journalism category. Rural journalism category. And this particular award was for 2019 for Mr. Gulab Kothari. 2019. So in the year 2018, who won this award? It was won by Mr. N. Ram. Mr. N. Ram won the Rajaram Mohan Roy Award for 2018. And I hope and I assume that you already know who this person is, N. Ram. He is the chairman of the Hindu Publishing Group. So I'm sure you know the newspaper The Hindu. It is under N. Ram. N. Ram. N. Ram, chairman of the Hindu Publishing Group. Who is this person? Last option, Mr. Ravish Kumar. He is the managing editor, NDTV India. He is the editor, NDTV India. He has also recently won a lot of awards. Two of them being one the Ramnath Goenka Award and the second Raman Magsaysay Award. So he won the Raman Magsaysay Award in the year 2019. Please write this down. Ravish Kumar won the famous Raman Magsaysay Award. Raman Magsaysay Award in the year 2019. He has also previously won the Ramnath Goenka Award for being the best journalist for a year. Ramnath Goenka Award. Another interesting question, who is this person, Mr. Ramnath Goenka, on whose name this particular award is conferred? Mr. Ramnath Goenka. He founded the newspaper Indian Express in 1932. Please write down. A very respectable name in media, Mr. Ramnath Goenka. He is no more. He founded the newspaper Indian Express in the year 1932. Mr. Ramnath Goenka. Fine. One more slight bit of information. I believe we would have covered this in earlier sessions as well. These awards are presented specifically on a date 16th of November every year. Anything special about 16th November? It is celebrated as National Press Day. 16th of November is celebrated as National Press Day. Press Council of India was established on this date. Just remember 16th November, it is called as the National Press Day because Press Council of India was established on this date. So awards are conferred on this particular date. Let's move on to the next question then. What is the maximum amount for a fixed deposit in banks? Answer is option 5, no upper limit, and this is logical. Why will banks want to keep a limit on the amount of fixed deposits? Because fixed deposits are typically time deposits which the depositor will not want to draw for that particular fixed term. So banks are free to use those money. Therefore, there is typically no upper limit. Banks would welcome as much money as depositors would want to put in the form of fixed deposits. Let's move on to the next question. Which of the following is are true? In the case of SLR, I hope all these terms written on this slide are absolutely clear to you. They have been covered in previous sessions. Please make sure that you go through them in between as well, and in future sessions as well. They might get recovered as part of revision, but they are absolutely essential for your exam. Make sure you are thorough with them and your all these values are on your tips. So as far as repo rate is concerned, you should know by default. So when you see such a question which relates to, let's say, CRR, SLR, repo, MSF, not just understanding the concepts but also the values, keeping them in mind is very important. So repo rate currently, what is it? Yes, it is 4%. Reverse repo rate, what is reverse repo rate? It is 3.35%, and therefore this fourth option is true. Reverse repo rate is always lower than repo rate because this is how RBI earns money. So repo and reverse repo are overnight rates for banks to draw money and for banks to lend money to RBI. So the rate at which banks borrow money, overnight funding for from the RBI is repo, and the rate at which RBI borrows money is the reverse. So this spread or margin is the difference on which RBI earns money daily. So reverse repo is 3.35, repo is 4%. Some students have this misconception that there is always a fixed difference between them. No, it is not so. So there is no guarantee that there will be a fixed difference of 25 basis points or 50 basis points. They might change. They are decided by the Monetary Policy Committee, MPC, 6 members. Again, a new chapter would open. Let's not go there. So repo 4%, reverse repo 3.35%. This is the value of current CRR, cash reserve ratio. It is 3% of NDTL. What is NDTL? Net demand and time liabilities. Then what is SLR? Statutory liquidity ratio. What is the current value in percentage terms? It is 18%. So which of the following is are true? I'll quickly move on, assuming that you know all these concepts. Answer is fourth option. Reverse repo rate is always lower than the repo rate. Let's move. Who among the following has been appointed the Goodwill Ambassador of the Indian contingent at the Tokyo Olympics? Answer is in front of you. Option 3. Mr. Saurav Ganguly. He is currently the BCCI president as well. Please write down. He is currently the BCCI president as well. And what does BCCI stand for? BCCI stands for Board of Control for Cricket in India. Board of Control for Cricket in India. Now, one more thing that we need to remember as far as Tokyo Olympics are concerned is Tokyo Olympics were originally scheduled to be held in Tokyo from July till August 2020, but because of the COVID-19 issue, they have now been postponed. And this is the first instance of any Olympic Games getting postponed. Previously, they have been cancelled but never postponed. Now, this is the first instance where, because of a pandemic, the Olympic Games have been postponed, and now they would happen around the same time next year, from July 23rd till August. Some particular dates are yet to be finalized. So, sometime in July and August, they will be rescheduled. And Mr. Saurav Ganguly was appointed as a Goodwill Ambassador in February 2020. Till that point in time, it was assumed that there is a chance that they might happen this year itself. Who are these other options? Sachin Tendulkar, Mr. Abhinav Bindra, they were appointed the Goodwill Ambassadors for the last event of Olympics that was held in 2016. Where was it held? It was held in Rio. It was held in Rio, called as Rio Olympics. One interesting thing that they have done, despite deferring this particular Olympics to next year, is it would still be called as Tokyo 2020 or Tokyo Olympics 2020. So the name does not change. It is only the scheduling that changes. So all the media campaigns will still run Olympics 2020 or Tokyo Olympics 2020 as a brand, so that it doesn't get confused with regards to the message that it is only postponed. The Olympics are still called as Olympics 2020. Fine. Let's move on to the next question then. What is the annual financial assistance given to eligible farmers under the PM Kisan scheme? So let us understand. Answer is in front of you. Answer is 6,000. Now this 6,000 is given in 3 equal installments. So rupees 2,000 each are transferred directly to the bank accounts of the farmers. Now what is this PM Kisan scheme? PM obviously refers to Pradhan Mantri. Kisan refers to Kisan Samman Nidhi. Kisan Samman Nidhi. When was it started? It was started on 24th of February. 24th of February 2019. 24th of February 2019. So 24th of February 2020 was the first anniversary that was celebrated. First anniversary that was celebrated. Now, what is the scheme about? Any farmer with irrespective of the land holding that he has, will be directly transferred an amount of 6,000 in his bank account. Who sponsors the scheme? The central government. 100% funding by the central government. It is managed by the states and respective union territories with regards to qualification of farmers and transferring those amounts in their banks and all that stuff. Operational things are managed by states and union territories, but it is financed by the government of India. All states and union territories are a part of this particular scheme except the state of West Bengal. Except the state of West Bengal. So 6,000 is the amount started on 24th February 2019. Fine. Let's move on to the next question. Which state government has sanctioned rupees 234 crore for the construction of Shahid Ashfaqullah Khan Zoo? Answer is in front of you. Answer is Uttar Pradesh. And I'm sure you know this person. And why is this title Shahid written in front of him? So Shahid Ashfaqullah Khan was a freedom fighter. He was a part of the Indian independence movement. He was a founding member of the Hindustan Republican Association, and I'm sure you would have heard of the famous Kakori train robbery. So he was convicted in that Kakori train robbery, and he was given a death sentence. He was hanged in the Faizabad jail for the same. And if you have watched a movie called Rang De Basanti, 2006, it's been 14 years now since that movie. So Rang De Basanti, Amir Khan was the main lead, but this person, Kunal Kapoor, played the role of Shahid Ashfaqullah Khan. So movie Rang De Basanti, Kunal Kapoor played the character of Shahid Ashfaqullah Khan. So the zoo or the zoological garden would be named after him. Let's move on to the next question. Which of the following has become the first telecom operator to facilitate the UPI payments feature? Answer is in front of you. Jio. It has enabled the UPI, Unified Payments Interface. Unified Payments Interface, full form of UPI. So Jio has enabled the Unified Payments Interface on the MyJio app. So if you log into the MyJio app, you will be able to access the UPI payments feature. It is the first telecom operator to do so. Also, please remember that Idea and Vodafone are not two different entities now. Idea and Vodafone are merged together. They are typically called as Voda Idea or Vodafone Idea. Let's move on to the next question. According to the recent report by the National Crime Records Bureau, which state is the worst place for women's security? Answer is in front of you, Uttar Pradesh. Second on the rank is Madhya Pradesh. Just remember these two states for crime or security against security as far as women are concerned. Uttar Pradesh is the worst place. Now these statistics have to be taken with a pinch of salt. Why? One, because if they are ranked the last because of the most number of reported incidents, there can be two ways to think about it. Why is it that there are more number of reportings in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh and some other states? One can be that there are actually so many incidents happening. The second is the reporting that is happening is more. So there might be few other states where the incidents are happening against women, but they are not getting reported. So that is also a big issue in India. So please understand that you have to remember the names, but just to have a logical understanding, please understand that if a state ranks um, at the lowest rank, it does not necessarily mean that it has the most number of incidents. Maybe it has the most number of reported incidents rather than the actual incidents. So let's move on to the next question. Which bank has appointed Suman Katpalia as its new managing director and chief executive officer? Answer is option 1, IndusInd Bank. IndusInd Bank. Now, IndusInd Bank is a private bank in India established in 1994. Write down 1994. Headquarter is in Pune. Generally banks are headquartered either in Mumbai or Delhi. IndusInd Bank has its headquarter in Pune. And who's the founder? Founder is Mr. S.P. Hinduja. Founded by Mr. S.P. Hinduja of the Hinduja Group. S.P. Hinduja. Sri Chand Parmanand Hinduja. Sri Chand Parmanand Hinduja. He is an Indian-born British billionaire. Probably second or third on the list of richest people in the UK. So Indian-born British billionaire founded this bank, IndusInd. This Indus comes from the Indus Valley civilization and refers to India. So IndusInd Bank, founded 1994, headquartered in Pune by S.P. Hinduja. I hope that you will take this as an assignment to remember the names of MD and chairman of all these leading banks. Federal Bank is Shyam Srinivasan, Bank of Baroda is MD is Mr. Sanjeev Chadda, and so on. So I hope that you will take time and research on the names and CEO of all the leading banks. These are important questions as far as your exam is concerned. I'm moving slightly fast because I believe these are just names that you can research and memorize on your own. Let's move on to the next question. Which of the following has launched India's first nanotechnology based product? Answer is second option, IFCO. Please write down the full form of IFCO. It is Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative Limited. Please write down the full form. Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative Limited, and it is the world's largest fertilizers cooperative. It is the world's largest fertilizers cooperative. So it has created three nanotechnology based products, namely nano nitrogen, which is a substitute for urea. Then you have nano copper and nano zinc. Nano nitrogen, a substitute for urea, nano zinc and nano copper. So where is it based? It is based in Gujarat, the state of Gujarat. What is a nanotechnology based product? It will have some products which are of the length of nanometers. So products which have at least some components of the length of nanometers. They are called as nanotechnology based products. Now what is officially the definition of nanometer? It's a unit of length. Please write down, this can be an interesting cheeky question. Unit of nanometer, it is equal to 10 to the power minus 9 meter. It is a unit of length equal to 10 to the power minus 9. What do you mean minus 9? Basically you are dividing 1 meter upon 10 ki power 9. What is 10 to the power 9? 1 followed by 90. 1 by billionth. 10 ki power 6 is million, 10 to the power 9 is billion. Useful for your DI as well. So this nanometer is 10 to the power minus 9 meter. Let's move on to the next question. Which country has launched Sudan's first ever satellite SR-SS-1? Answer is China. Anything important as far as Sudan is concerned? Just remember the current head of Sudan currently is the General Abdel Fattah Abdel, A-B-D-E-L. Please write down the spelling, correct spelling. Abdel, A-B-D-E-L, Abdel Fattah, F-A-T-T-A-H, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, A-L-Burhan, B-U-R-H-A-N. Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. He is a military general who is currently the chairman of the Sovereignty Council. This is after a military coup. This is after a military coup of the previous president, Mr. Omar al-Bashir, O-M-A-R. Please write down the name. Omar, O-M-A-R, Omar al-Bashir. He was the president for 30 long years. 30 long years. From 1989. From would it be 89? He was ousted in 2019. You can do the math. Yes. From 1989 till 2019. He was the president of Sudan, and he was ousted in a military coup, and the latest update as of February 2020 is that he'll be handed over to the International Criminal Court. International Criminal Court. Sudan would hand over him to the International Criminal Court for the genocide that he was involved in Darfur. So you can maybe research the war on Darfur, D-A-R-F-U-R. What else do you need to know? I hope you know the names of important people in all these countries. India and China, you don't need to cover. I am sure all of you know it. France, who is the president of France? Mr. Emmanuel Macron. So if you don't know, please write it down. President of France, Mr. Emmanuel Macron. Russia, I am sure you know, Mr. Vladimir Putin. Mr. Vladimir Putin. Now, one interesting thing that he has done is he has amended the constitution, which allows him to continue being the president of Russia till 2036. He is currently the president till 2024. Now, the constitution has been amended and a referendum has also been done, where majority of people, it has been done very recently. So a referendum has been done which allows the Russian president now to extend his term. He has already been in term for almost a lot of time now, and this was the last term officially as per the constitution. Somebody else had to replace him, but now he has amended that constitution and he can remain being the president as long as 2036. Vladimir Putin. So please remember this name. You have to remember this name for a long time to come. Vladimir Putin. And last country is Germany, who is the current chancellor. We have discussed this earlier as well. Angela Merkel. Let's move on to the next question. RBI conducts long-term repo operations Answer is option fifth. 1, 2 and 3 all are correct. What do you mean long-term repo operations? This is sometimes not covered in detail. I'll quickly spend time on this. Repo operations, repo is overnight lending at the rate which is currently 4%. Now, RBI conducts long-term repo operations, which typically would mean that RBI would lend money for a period ranging between 1 to 3 years at the current repo rate. So, repo rate typically is for short-term lending, typically overnight lending. But if RBI allows banks to borrow money at the current repo rate for a slightly longer duration, like 1 to 3 years, then it is called as long-term repo operations. It was done recently in February. So all the three options are correct. It improves monetary transmission, it makes available liquidity at reasonable cost, so it helps them reduce the marginal cost of lending rate (MCLR), to which most of the loans are now connected, and it augments credit flows. Fine. Let's move on to the next question. As of 19th June 2020, which among the following became the first Indian company? We have covered this earlier as well. Answer is Reliance Industries, chairman being Mr. Mukesh Ambani. Who was the founder of Reliance Industries? Mr. late Dhirubhai Ambani. Dhirubhai Ambani. Fine. One small assignment that if you are interested, please follow the names of 10 foreign companies that have invested in Geo platforms. So since I believe March 2020, 10 companies. Leading the pack is Facebook with a 9.9% stake in Geo platforms. But just research on the names of companies like Mubadala Investments, Intel Capital, L Catterton, KKR, or Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, Vista Equity, Silver Lake Partners. Just go through these names and identify how much stake they have borrowed in the Geo platforms, which is a subsidiary of RIL. Also, please research on the 6 or 7 subsidiaries of RIL, one being Network 18, another being Reliance Retail, another being Reliance Petroleum. Just research more on RIL. There might be a question or two on RIL. Let's move on to the next question. Whom of the following Indians have been elected to the International Tennis Federation Men's Players Panel and will represent the Asia Oceanic Zone? Answer is in front of you. Answer is option 5, Nikki Poonacha. He is the current national champion. He won the national championships in India in 2019. Nikki Poonacha. Not much to discuss for this question as well, and I believe this was the last question for the day. I hope you have thoroughly enjoyed this session and you've learned some very important concepts and pieces of information. Make sure that you revise them thoroughly. All the best.